It's episode 79 of the Improv London podcast. I'm so tired. I'm your host, Stuart Moses, and this week's guest is Tom Young.
Hello!
Hello! How are you?
I'm very well. I'm very excited to be sat in a park in Birmingham.
I know, but it is a lovely park.
It is. Yeah.
We have our backs to the church, St David's Church, I believe.
Nice, excellent detail.
And there are lights in the trees. We can see the skyline of Birmingham. The jam house is illuminated with green.
There's a lot going on. It's a good, inspirational area to be sat, actually.
It's not nearly as weird as I feared it might be. It's actually quite lit.
Yeah.
I just felt that it seemed less weird than inviting you to my hotel room. I mean, obviously that was my first choice, but that just sends a message that, you know, I don't know if anyone's ready for it.
Weirdly, I don't know what it says about me. I wouldn't have found that weird.
Okay, maybe that's...
I should just gone,
no, maybe. I mean, it was probably just in my own, let's go sit outside a church.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about.
We are, of course, both wearing towel dressing gowns.
And those little slippers that you get in hotels.
Yeah, you've got to commit to the look.
Little hats. What a shame it is in audio format, because otherwise...
We've made all this effort.
So underneath your toweling robe, because it's fallen open just a little bit, I can see that you're wearing a The Same Faces t-shirt.
We discovered there's a website called Spreadshirt where you can basically just upload designs.
Yeah.
And rather than having to book buy merchandise, you just order individual what you want.
Cool.
So the other thing is, because I'm a very tall man, for those who don't know me, I'm 6'7", so buying clothes that fit me is a huge problem.
Yeah.
And I discovered that Spreadshirt stuff does fit me. So basically everything I own now has got my own branding on it.
Excellent.
Which is quite vain.
No, I think that's brilliant. Yeah. I think we should all have more
always
stuff
on message
that advertises other stuff. I sat here in my nursery hoodie.
Yes.
Brilliant. But you are in The Same Faces?
I am the director of
You're the director of The Same Faces.
But I'm also in it, the promoter, the producer, the head of training, pretty much everything except playing the piano, pretty much.
Cool. So what sort of group are The Same Faces?
Same Faces are short form specialists, but we play a mixture of the classic Whose Line sort of games. There's a handful that we've created. We're working on one at the moment, which I'm very pleased with, which is Points of View.
Points of View?
Yeah.
One for the younger listeners, I believe.
And it does also involve a Terry Wogan impression a solid 18 months after that's appropriate. We've been working on that, so we now basically get... we've got a load of cards made, which will get the audience to choose the cards, and they've each got a different type of television show on them. And then we ask them for whatever they ask for is that would suit that genre, and then we basically do Terry Wogan introducing clips.
Yeah.
And so we then see clips of television shows and then a letter of complaint.
Well, I mean, I'm all for... I mean, I'm presuming Points of View is no longer actually on TV.
I'm told it is.
Is it really?
Yeah, I think it's now hosted by Jeremy Vine, but because I'm a comedian, I'm not up in the day on a Sunday, so I don't see it.
It was on during the week, who knows?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, right, because I was going to applaud you for taking a format that is now obsolete and breathing new life into it.
In so many ways, that's my specialty. Yeah, so we do that. Then we also do a range of musical games, and then we've got a lot of quick-fire stuff, which a lot of short-form groups don't do. So there's we've adapted scenes we'd like to see from Mock the Week to be more suitable for an improv thing. So I basically have 18 structures that you can just put a detail in that changes at each time, and it'll work regardless of whatever the audience says. So. So that keeps it varied and gives us an opportunity just to do quick-fire one-liners.
Yeah. So you've got 18 variations.
I
have not seen Mock the Week. It sounds horrible.
There's a broad number of improvisers who would say the same. There is... it's basically scenes from a hat.
Yes.
From Whose Line. But it tends to be slightly more topical with there. So we basically... but obviously it's controlled on Mock of the Week, so they probably, I'm assuming, know what the categories are going to be in advance.
Right.
We don't know, we just know what the structures are. So the first one, number one, off the top of my head, is unlikely lines to hear in a, and then in square brackets it says movie franchise.
Right.
So you would, whatever you ask for a movie franchise, they say Indiana Jones, and you go, okay, unlikely lines to hear in an Indiana Jones film, and then you do that.
Right.
So the structures will change based on whatever the audience suggests. So they're fun.
That sounds fun. No, that does sound fun.
So we do that, and then we also more recently have started a slightly adapted Armando show as well.
Right, cool. So the Armando format, remind me what that is.
So you get a word from the audience, you use some version of an opening. We usually, for our show, we use a monologue because we get a stand-up comedian to come and be the headliner. And
there I was hoping you were going to do an invocation.
Alas, no.
So you get a stand-up in?
Yeah, we get a stand-up in. So we even...
in an improv show?
I know. Well, I am a stand-up as well myself. So
I tell you what.
I live in two worlds. And my degree is in creative writing. So it's a weird amalgamation of a Venn diagram, my life. Anyway, so we get a stand-up in. So the first monologue in the show is their stand-up. So we're looking for little things. And it's never like the main idea. It's usually somebody will go... I have nothing else on that, and then you have a whole scene of people going, I have nothing else on that. And it's lovely. And then for the rest of it, they do improvise their monologues. But we only book people who I know can do that, rather than just booking it. Who's available? That's a terrible way of doing it. And then, so in a proper Armando, you would do premise-based game scenes until you run out of ideas.
Yeah.
In our version, which is a bit shorter and a bit punchier, and partially because I'm paying money to the headliner and I want to get my money's worth from them, we only ever do 3 scenes.
Oh, right.
So I'd rather leave stuff on the table than run out of ideas.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So this shorter version I have called a Mandy.
Nice.
Because all of the improv formats are named after dudes, and I decided a little bit of feminism wouldn't be the worst thing.
Brilliant. Now I want to think of a format and then give it a female name. As I mentioned, I'm really tired.
Yeah, that's fair.
There's a game for you at home. Do write in to the Improv London podcast, BBC TV Centre, London W12.
I like that you've gone
1QT.
Yeah, immediately the BBC's old postcode. That's beautiful. Postcodes ingrained in your head from childhood.
I'm really tempted to do the number for Saturday Superstore, but is it 01 81180?
I mean, I'm 28. I don't know.
I thought you were up to date with the old.
Yeah, I do a lot of dated references, but not as many as you'd think.
What's 018118055? I hope that's not my number at home. Don't ring it.
I don't know. It might be one of the gay chat lines.
Don't ring that number, whatever it is.
Yeah, it could be anything.
Cool. That sounds a really nice format.
Yeah, it's fun.
So you're the director. So you set up the group, or did you? Or was there a coup? Someone else set up, and you swooped in and took over.
Well, sort of a reverse coup, sort of. So I started. My improv history is a bit rubbish because I started. I was in America in 2004 when I must have been about 16, and Whose Line Is It Anyway was on every night while we were there, and I immediately became obsessed. I'm sure a lot of people's stories start this way. And then wasn't until 4 years later when I went to uni. So this was before YouTube, so I spent 4 years using LimeWire to find every Whose Line clip I could possibly find. What's the statute of limitations on LimeWire downloads?
I think it's very fine.
Yeah, it's probably fine. But before YouTube existed, so I was trying to find every clip I could, so that when I eventually started at uni, I knew a lot of the games like inside out because I'd watched them so much. Then I went to university where the student group was run in a very basic way. So really the only directorial note we got at any point was justify.
Right, okay.
So I didn't even find out about Yes and until after I graduated.
Wow.
So that was encouraging.
I mean, justify is a good instruction.
It is. I mean,
it was a suggestion, but it's not the only one.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and it was never like shouted at you. It was held up on a piece of paper and waved from the from the director's position.
Really
so that was strange, but I mean, that gave me we performed at least once a month and 3-hour workshop every week and whatever. So I got a lot of playing time through that. And then I joined a group in Leicester called Unidentified Flying Improv, who...
That was a silent laugh. That was just no use if I'm in the audience. But I was amused by that, but not enough to make any noise.
That's about right. It's also one of the reasons, because my uni group was called Indescriptible.
Indescriptible. I'm enjoying that.
Which was a shame, because the year before I got to the university, the previous group had been called Scared Scriptless, which is a significantly better name.
Yes.
Indescriptible. So, Indescriptible, which is not a bad review of it either, to be fair.
You never want a name of a group that reviews itself.
Yeah, exactly. So part of the reason the Same Faces is called the Same Faces is because I didn't want a pun in the title. But anyway, so after a couple of years in, I ended up running UFI just by default, because the original person who was running it dropped out for a while. And I was trying to make it better, because the very first UFI gig I did, 11 people turned up to play.
Right, okay.
There was no set list, or nobody had any sense of what was going to happen. There was no quota of number of games each, so it was basically, right, I think we'll do Party Quirks next.
Yeah.
Who wants to play that? And if you were keen like me, you did everything. And if you were a bit slower, you maybe did one game. So I was trying to professionalise it a bit, so I was trying to get it down to being okay, we'll only have 6 of us, here's a set list.
Wow.
So because I was a relatively late addition to the group, I got fought on that.
Yeah.
There was a bit of an argument. The phrase, "Nobody asked you to run it, Tom," was used.
Oh.
To which I said, "Fine," and I left.
Yeah.
And I'd been thinking about going anyway, but that was just the point that it had to happen. Because it was everybody in that group basically had a day job and whatever, so it was never going to grow beyond a certain point. So I just decided, okay, I'll go and do the thing I actually want to do.
Yeah.
So I left, took 2 of the lads who were of a similar age to me with me, and we set up the Same Faces. So, and this is not a bragging statement, because it is a bit of a shame, but 4 years later, UFI doesn't exist, because nobody stepped in to replace me. This is partially why I was running it. Nobody else had the time. UFI doesn't exist anymore, and the Same Faces are one of the bigger groups in the Midlands now. So I say that purely because it sort of reaffirms in my head, I'm making good choices.
Yes.
Okay, this is all right. But yeah, we've had a number of the members of UFI have come and played with the Same Faces, because the Same Faces are not a fixed group.
Right.
So we have 3 regular members, and one of the guys who left UFI with me now he's moved to Edinburgh, but we've picked up another regular since. So we have 3 regular members and then 2 guests in each show, and a pianist. So the guests can be members of my workshops, they can be from other groups, they can be people who happen to be in town, people who we've played with before, whatever. So it's always a rotating cast. So part of the reason it's called the Same Faces was because I knew it wasn't always going to be the same faces,
lovely.
and I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
The other reason was because we play a lot of characters, but they've all got the same faces.
Right. Yes.
And then because it sounds a bit like a boy band, and I wanted it to be marketable in some way. That was sort of the genesis of it.
That's layers. I love layers.
Yeah.
In fact, I love layers more than a pun, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted there to be some meaning behind it, but if you saw it, you wouldn't really question it.
Yeah.
But if somebody asked, there was an interesting reason behind it. So it's nice to have that level of variation.
Cool. And so, how often do you rehearse?
Well, we're in 2 towns now. So for the first 6 months, we were just in Leicester, and then because I went to uni in Northampton, and I live halfway between Leicester and Northampton, we now have 2 shows a month. So we have 3 shows with the Armando show. We have 2 shows in Leicester, the short forms at the beginning of the month, and then the Northampton shows at the end of the month.
Right.
And then I do 2 weekly workshops, 1 in each town.
Wow.
So half the group train in Northampton and half the group train in Leicester.
Yes.
And then once every 3 months I go, we should really everybody meet each other. So we then do a workshop day for 6 hours where I put them all in one room together.
Wow.
And then they've all sort of met at one time or another through either doing gigs or being in the audience, and then occasionally somebody comes to the workshop days and I forget they don't know everybody else, because obviously I know everyone because I'm at both workshops. So we do. At the minute I'm running a beginner's course again as well, so I'm doing 6 hours a week at the minute because I'm doing an hour for the beginners on both workshops, and then 2 hours. 2 hours after that. So yeah, weekly, because I think it's like going to the gym.
Yeah.
And it's a muscle you've got to keep sharp.
Yes.
Sharp's the wrong word, but I'm mixing metaphors horrendously here.
Yeah, I don't think I want anything sharp when I go to. I'm not really a gym bunny.
No,
so,
me neither.
I mean, a lot of people have been saying that, and I'd like them to stop that.
Yeah.
That, obviously I've been working out. Please stop saying that. That is not true. Just stop it, please.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, but I do think. Like, I know groups who only meet once a month, and I go, how are you doing that? I feel rusty if I miss a week.
Yes.
And I'm like, I can't not be doing it all the time in order to stay at my best.
Yes.
And I am fairly insistent about being at my best for these things, because I am... I mean, as I say, there's 3 regular members, but to most intents and purposes, I'm the face of it.
Yes.
So, like, I host certainly the beginning of the show, and I do, like, the notices at the end, and... I sort of serve a weird role in the show where I'm sort of half performer and half the audience member on stage. So I'm sort of linking the audience to the players, and so it is me. So I do like to make sure I'm match fit for it, because I've got to carry some of the show a lot of the time.
One of the things that's come up since I've been speaking to improvisers in the Midlands has been we've been talking about the audience and interacting with the audience. Yeah. What are your kind of tips for getting the audience on side or looking after them, or is there anything in particular that you do?
Well, one of the other ways I make my money is from comparing stand-up gigs. So I'm used to, walk onto a cold stage and pull the room together. Yeah. So if you can get them to cheer in a string of unusual ways, that's usually a good way of merging them together. And if you can get them to cheer something that's unusual.
Right.
So at the minute, I'm very much enjoying, I get them to go, ooh, ah, and then, what's another ah? Ah, like a pirate. And then the final one is, go, ah, but like a confused Scooby-Doo.
Oh.
But when you get an entire room of people make that noise, it's one of the most beautiful things in the world.
That's amazing.
And so you've usually got them in the palm of your hand after that, because if you've made them do that and you've done it with the right level of this is ridiculous, then it usually wins them over quite quickly. But yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that sometimes gets lost in improv gigs is that the idea that the audience has to enjoy it as much or if not more than the performers.
Yeah.
And because I also come from stand-up, where, if the performer's enjoying it more than the audience in stand-up, nobody stays. So I'm very insistent. This has to be a certain level of enjoyable. I'm also quite a controversial figure, Stuart, because I do feel that improv should be funny.
Whoa.
Yeah, I know. I want it to have other emotions. I want it to have emotional depth and moments of silence and stuff. But underneath all that, I still think it should be funny.
Right.
Even I'm starting to dabble now. With, my Leicester group is working on Harold's, while my Northampton group is working on narrative stuff.
Whoa.
And then I'm in a few months I'll switch them and do it the other way around.
Yeah.
But even in those, I'm going. You've got an opportunity to be funny there.
Right.
Even silence is golden, I think, in improv, because nobody expects it.
Yes.
Certainly in the audience. So, I'm pretty sure when we sat down, we weren't expecting fireworks.
No, well, I mean, since you said it, you're a controversial figure. You've set off fireworks in a deeply literal.
I'm genuinely disappointed that when I said improv should be funny, that wasn't the moment that it went off.
Someone's head was exploding. We're like, what?
But there should be. Silence is great, because you can just stop, and it builds tension immediately when the audience is going, "Why are they going to say anything?" And if you leave it long enough, the audience will laugh without you doing anything else, because they just can't bear the tension for that long.
Yes.
So you can do all sorts of other stuff that isn't jokey.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that makes us magic is being funny out of nowhere.
Yes.
And so I've watched more theatrical shows and gone.
Right, yeah.
I feel like you're enjoying this more than the audience is.
Right.
And I'm sure that it's possible I've just not seen the right shows. But for me, if it's not funny, I'm slightly less interested than if it is.
Okay, so I'm really interested in that idea of being funny.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to be funny.
Yeah.
but I would like to be funny.
Sorry, I said yes as though you're not. Yeah, I can understand. Yeah.
That's why I'm doing the podcast. I'm here to learn. You're here to teach me. No, that's entirely fine. So, how do I... This is a hard question. How do I be funny without sacrificing the reality of the scene that we're playing for a cheap laugh? I want an expensive laugh.
Okay, so I can usually... This is another place where I lose people, because I can do gags in scenes while still yes-anding in the process of the gag.
Wow.
So I'm still giving the other player something to react to. There are two levels of gags. There are gags that are like one up from a block, where, yeah, all right, that was funny, but you've shut the scene down.
Yes.
And then there's the other version, which I think is fine, where you've said something funny, but the scene can still grow from it. And that's the one I try and specialise in.
Yeah.
So that's the thing to spot. The other thing I find very useful is connections. So if you've got multiple things happening at once, I've got a weird brain that I can sort of picture it all like the Matrix code or whatever, and just go, oh, okay, that links to that, and that links to that, and it'll be funny there.
Wow.
But I think part of the reason I can do that is that, as I say, the Armando show for us is quite recent, and that means I've spent probably about 8 years just doing short form.
Right, yes.
So from a game like, everybody knows it's Pillars, we call it Missing Words.
Right.
But with a game like Pillars...
Missing Words is a much better name.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because...
The other reason is we don't play it with two people stood on the side of the stage.
Right, okay,
we
fair
use
enough.
the whole audience.
Because Pillars don't speak.
Exactly, yeah.
If Pillars spoke, and then two people, they might look like Pillars, but mainly they look like people.
Yeah.
If you say Missing Words... Oh, I know what that means.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm getting missing word supplied. Sorry.
No, that's exactly my point on it. Yeah, I've changed a number of games' titles because they made more sense that way. So we changed the game Puppets to Mannequins, because if you call it Puppets, everybody treats you like a marionette and they keep hold of you the whole time.
Right.
Whereas if you tell them that they're a mannequin and they move like a shot mannequin does, and if you let it go, it stays there.
Yes.
Then they know that that's the sort of action you want, rather than being constantly controlled.
Right. Yeah.
So there's just subtle name changes that, especially if you're getting the audience involved directly, as you are in Missing Words and Mannequins, you need to give them straight away, oh, this is what this is. So anyway, the point of that was like,
your matrix brain.
Because of a game like Missing Words or New Choice or something like that, my justification skills are very strong.
Yes.
One of the biggest problems I have when I'm teaching now is I try and think of bad examples and I can't do it because somebody will go, what would be a bad example? And I go, I literally can't think of one, because everything I can think of, I can then think of how I'd get out of it.
Right. Yeah.
So it's very difficult for me to think of a way not to do something now. But because loads of people start doing short form, obviously, but I feel like very few people stick with it long enough to learn how to do it brilliantly. And that's I fell in love with Whose Line Is It Anyway? That's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I went and saw Ostentatious and went, oh, I want to do that, but I better learn to do short form first.
Yeah.
The short form was the end goal for me.
Yeah.
And then since I've gone, okay, I'd also like to learn how to do the other things so that I can do the other things. But then I also think about the promotional effort of putting on extra shows, and I go, maybe we'll just wait for a little while. So because I've taken the time to learn those fundamental skills, they are transferable to all other aspects of improv.
Yeah.
So, and that is the point of them. They are meant to be training exercises, but certain ones work better on stage than others.
Yes.
So if you can master a game like Missing Words or New Choice or Interview Switch is a game we play at the start of every gig. And the reason we do that is that it gets everybody a laugh. Everybody on stage gets a laugh before that game is over.
So Interview Switch being?
So Interview Switch, we have two players. One interviews the other. You get an area of expertise from the audience. Very quick game, because usually they get one line out.
Whoa!
People don't like quick games either.
I didn't think that was controversial.
that was
Improv fireworks. What a weird heckle.
Indeed.
How would you put that down? Isn't it a shame when cousins marry? I remember when I had my first drink. You can't heckle a firework. Stop it.
No, it's already blown itself up. It's got nowhere to go. The two players are interviewed. One player interviews the other. They've got an area of expertise from the audience. They introduce the host introduces it with usually some pun based on whatever the expertise is. they usually ask one question, they get one line to reply usually, and then if it gets a laugh, I'll shout switch, and then the interviewer becomes the interviewee, somebody new comes in to interview them, and we go around the circle until we've all gone.
Cool.
But it just introduces all the players really quickly. Everybody gets a laugh, so they're a bit more settled, and then you're off, and you can go and do other games. But I'm also, one of my directorial choices with the same faces is that I want every game in the set list to look different to the last.
Brilliant, yeah.
So it's not just here's a two-person scene, here's a two-person scene, here's a two-person scene. So we do interview switch is a quick group game, then we'll usually do a two-person scene, then something like Party Quirks is a guessing game, then we usually have a Mandy.
Right,
then a musical game, so we do Bartender normally.
Bartender being?
People come into a bar and sing about their problems and the bartender sings them a solution.
Lovely.
Advert Break, which is a game we created, which is basically still scenes from a hat, but you get products or services from the audience and do adverts for them. We do that, and then the second half will be usually another guessing game because it's a quick way of getting the energy back up. Then we usually do greatest hits. There's usually a two-player game or something a bit more like a gibberish lecture or a two-headed expert, something like that. Another group game, another musical game, quick-fire game, usually Irish drinking song as an encore. So it's usually, they all look different to each other, so it's never boring to look at, and you go, oh, there's another two-person scene. So we try and keep it visually varied.
I think that's really important because, just in any show or in any run of scenes, it's just, let's keep it, keep the audience interested, let's have a bit of a mixture of stuff. I entirely agree with that. So you mentioned that you run workshops.
Yep.
So what sort of things, what's your favourite exercise to teach in a workshop, or key one, or just... if I was to come along to your workshop, what would I expect?
Well, it depends when you came.
Okay.
We set with the core group is now sort of taught as a weird mixture of a drop-in, but I'm always trying to give them something new, or my teaching style is sort of putting out fires.
Right.
So if we've done something not as well as something else in the last show, at the next workshop I'm probably going to work on that, just to make sure that we've addressed it.
Cool.
So that would be for the core group. The beginners workshop, like at the minute, this week we did gibberish, I think. I think with both workshops, I can't remember. So we did gibberish Cluedo.
Gibberish Cluedo?
Oh yeah, so you have 5 players, you send 4 of them out the room. You give one of them the occupation of the person who was murdered, the room of the house where they were murdered and what they were murdered with.
Right,
And then through gibberish and mime, they have to pass it on down the line.
Yes. I have played that. No, I did do it with gibberish. I did that at Hoopla. It was called something else.
It will be called something else because I couldn't remember what the proper title was.
No, but your title, it explains what it is. That's a really good title. I hope that title catches on.
Yeah, well, I'm perfectly happy for it to do so. So we did that this week with them, and then next week we'll be doing some offers stuff where I basically get them to do scenes that are probably no more than 4 lines long, but the point is to get them used to making neutral offers with no emotional expectation, and then getting the other players used to yes-anding those, and then yes-and that, and yes-and that, and then I usually call scene and move them on. But that's just a quick exercise to get them used to doing that, especially as we do so many games with so many different types of offers.
Yes.
Because obviously with the Armando show, that's a very premise-heavy offer, so you've got to come in and go, this is what we're doing. Whereas with a musical game, you've obviously got to set it up slightly differently, or with like a scene-based game, that's going to be more, okay, well that was the word, here's my offer to you. So I try and get them used to making different types of offers as early as I can. Zip Zap Boing has become probably our go-to warm-up now, just because we've got so many different rules for it at this point. I think we're up to 12 different rules.
Wow, excellent. I love a game that evolves like that.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And it gets worse. I was late to a workshop by about 10 minutes a couple of weeks ago, and I got there and they'd added 2 new rules. And I was like, right, what's happening? Because at this point we've got other people, like Jen Kenny, I would imagine a lot of people in London at this point know Jen Kenny, because Jen, I created a monster, basically. Jen came on her birthday, I think 4 years ago, having never done any kind of improv before. Just, like, her husband works nights, so she just goes out and does things. and she just came and gave it a go, and then 4 years later she does more than I do. So literally any chance she can, she performs. So she's been here in Birmingham most of the week. Like she did the Tadpole show on Wednesday.
Yeah, no, I saw her.
All sorts of other stuff. So
hello, Jen.
Hello, Jen. Yeah, she'll be very pleased. So what was I talking about before I brought Jen up?
You were talking about workshops and zip zap boing.
Oh yes, so like Jen obviously, and people like her go out and do other workshops with other people. So they'll go and play zip zap boing somewhere else, and then they'll bring rules back, and then we just end up with this mega cluster version of everybody else's rules, and we go, okay, let's see what we can remember.
Yeah, no, it's lovely when you can cross pollinate these things.
Yeah,
and bring in rules and you know,
because we're right in the middle of the country as well, so we've got groups like in every direction who've got their own rules, so we don't have to go very far to find somebody else. So there's all sorts of different things that we do, and then at the minute we'll have a separate training session for the Amando team, because the Amando's a different type of improv to the short form, so I only have the people who I know can do it in that group. Which is sort of it's not an elite team, but it's because I keep adding people into it as they develop. So that's a separate group. So that tends to be more Armando and mind meldy sort of group mind exercises in that one. Mind melds has become popular recently as well.
Hate mind meld. Hate it.
We did one on the first word the other day.
Oh, really?
And we went,
brilliant. Excellent.
That'll never happen again.
Well, brilliant. We've done that. Now we can do some proper games.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Anyway, we haven't got time to get into my hate of mind meld. I might just do a separate podcast that I record at 4:00 in the morning when I can't sleep. And it's like,
drunk, kebab in hand.
This is why I hate mind meld. It just takes forever, and you just can't stop it until it's been done.
Yeah.
And I think there's much better ways of finding out what's going on.
The trouble is when you get caught in words that are similar, but too similar to think of another word that's in the middle.
Also, I can't remember the words we've already had.
Oh yeah, that's always a thing.
Which is terrible. Let's stop talking about mind meld. Let's talk about, you have an improv retreat.
We do, yes.
Tell me about that.
So it wasn't even started by me officially, but I'd been thinking about doing my own, and then I think this was before I knew Osho Leela existed as well. But Jeff Monk, who was one of the founding members of Miss Imp in Nottingham, he was setting one up in Edale. This was November 2015. And he asked me if I wanted to be involved in it. And so I ended up teaching, I think it was 12 workshops or something like that over the weekend, and I taught 4 of them.
Oh, right, yeah.
So basically I was involved, and then I was sort of co-emceeing the weekend as well. And then when the next one rolled around, that was in a youth hostel with 32 of us.
Yeah.
And then the next one rolled around, and I said, I'll help you set this one up and help with the program. And because it was more than 12 workshops, because there was no break. So there was 2 workshops before lunch, and they were 90-minute workshops. So there was 3 hours in the morning, and then 3 hours in the afternoon, and then a show in the evening. And so on the Saturday, everybody was burned out by the end of the evening. So I, who spent my youth at like Christian youth conferences and stuff, know you need some free time in the middle of the day so people can go and have a nap and stuff.
Yeah.
So I basically took over the programming. So for the one coming up in November this year is the 5th one, I think. Mathematically, that should be right. So we do one in the autumn and one in the spring. I've been directly involved in running the current 4. The only one I wasn't directly involved in the planning was the first one.
Yeah.
And then it's just gradually grown. So it usually is in the Midlands or somewhere around the Midlands, because it's a good central point to get everybody to. And we've got people who come up from Totnes and down from Sheffield and Leeds and wherever. So we try and make it relatively central. And it's grown. So we've gone from 32 at the first one to the one in November's now got, I think, over 60 people coming.
Sure.
And the point is that it's run on a co-op basis. So the people who teach it are people who are attending the weekend anyway, and they get money off the price in exchange for teaching every workshop they teach.
Yeah.
But that means that we managed to keep the costs a lot lower, because obviously the May Days retreat is basically 500 quid, whereas ours has, I don't think at any point been more than £150.
Wow. And
that includes all your accommodation, all your food, all your teaching.
Yeah, that's amazing.
The only thing it doesn't include is the alcohol. And, oh boy, is some alcohol consumed over that weekend. I always lose my voice.
Yeah.
Absolutely always, because I'm doing the most speaking. Because while I do the programme, I then also pretty much MC the weekend, so I'm talking the whole time, and then I think I'm teaching 3 workshops at this next one. So my voice is usually gone by Saturday afternoon. I think my average amount of sleep for the weekend is about 7 hours. And usually I've had to stop playing basketball because they changed the nights that the basketball team plays on. But I usually come straight back and then go out and play basketball because I have no ability to make good decisions.
Well, I believe if you make a commitment, you should honour that commitment within a certain amount of reason.
It's usually like brain dead tired. I can still run around. So I'm usually fine. So it's the driving back that's usually the most dangerous part. Historically speaking, our Sundays have been cursed.
Really?
Yeah. At the second event, the power, it was like an old country hall that had been converted into like a conference centre, and they had their own generator, and the power went out on Sunday morning. The one after that, everybody got what we think was either food poisoning or norovirus. I think it was food poisoning because nobody passed it on when they got home.
God.
The most recent event back in April, Jeff, who, as I say, co-runs it with me, he discovered he had a work commitment he couldn't get out of, so he wasn't there for about 80% of the weekend.
Oh no! Oh dear.
So me, who's done none of the admin in advance, I'm suddenly in charge, going, "Oh, great! I've got no idea. All I know is what's happening in the program. If you have any questions about your rooms or anything, I don't know." Oh, yeah, that was chaos. So we're hoping that this one will be smooth, but this one's in Melton Mowbray. As I say, this one is already sold out, so or at least the residential part of it. Right. I think you can still sign up to come on the day, on the Saturday, because we added a day rate in this time because we knew there were going to be some people who either couldn't afford to come for the whole weekend or couldn't make the time commitment for the whole weekend. So we went, well, if we offer a £50 day rate that just covers your food and the teaching, we'll get, and we sure enough have got, I think it's like 7 people we've added by having the day rate, and I think that's still open. I'm not 100% certain. Okay,
check the website for
BritishImprovProject.com. Sure enough, there is a website. If the sign up form is still active, there's still space. Otherwise, if Jeff's closed it down, there isn't.
That's a good system.
We've been gradually growing. We've been joined by a small dog.
Hello. You don't get this when you record at the nursery. Hello. That's no problem at all. It's very nice, in fact.
Delightful to make this opportunity to make friends. He has slobbered straight down me, unless that was used to it while I wasn't looking. But,
I sneak that in. I thought you hadn't noticed until later.
Anyway, so then we haven't locked it down yet because we've never been back to the same venue twice yet because we've just moved it round for the sake of moving it round. But the venue we're going to in Melton Mowbray for November, we think might end up being our permanent base because, like, Jeff and I went to look round and I was going, "Can we afford this? It's too nice." But it's a really nice place, and there's a care home next door. So when it gets too much,
just go there next door.
So we're thinking that's possibly going to end up being our permanent base, but we actually obviously want to have an event there before we make that decision. But if so, pretty much straight away, sign up for the probably April weekend will be available by the end of the year. So it's a fairly constant process. And basically the reason we wanted to talk about this on the podcast is I think one person from London has been to any of the 5 events.
Yeah, wow.
And so we have more people fly in from other countries.
Yeah.
And there's only like 4 of them. We have more people fly in from other countries than have been up from London. Kaylee Cassidy came to the second one, and she's the only Londoner who's come. And I think that's a shame. Because the whole point of it is, it's a huge networking thing. Like, we've met so many people who've like ended up coming to play with the same faces or whatever, purely from these weekends, who we probably otherwise wouldn't have met. And the other reason for it is I'm sort of on a mission to unify the nationwide improv community and make sure there's more connections made. Because, like, I know of a group up in Shipley in Yorkshire who are very out of the way and wouldn't necessarily meet other improvisers or wouldn't feel part of the wider community without the British Improv Project. So we wanted to make sure that other people were getting a sense of community from it. So that was one. And then my other thing was I wanted to raise the national standard of improv because I'm a high tide raises all ships kind of a person. And my logic was, I've heard too often people say to me, "Oh, I saw an improv show once and it wasn't very good, so I don't want to go and see another one." Whereas my logic is, well, if we just raise everybody's standard across the country, that won't happen, and more people will come and see my show.
Hooray!
Yeah, exactly. So I really want to get more people from London involved, and I want people to come up. And as I say, it's about a fifth of the price of the Maydays weekend, so it's more affordable for people who can't afford to do the Maydays. I can't afford to do the Maydays, otherwise I would. And it's not in any way meant to compete with the Maydays one.
There's room enough for both.
Absolutely, and they offer, like I would imagine, different levels. So we wanted to just make sure there was something for everybody, but we also want to involve more experienced people.
Hello again. Hello.
Fireworks, dogs. You don't get this in most podcasts. It's great.
This is all staying in.
It is. Yeah. I would imagine so. So we wanted to get more people from London involved, just to come and go. Oh, good stuff happens outside of London too, which is a phrase I believe Emily Brady said just a couple of weeks ago. She obviously is representing Nottingham, I represent Leicester and Northampton, and Jeff's Nottingham as well, and obviously we're here in Birmingham for the festival. People from all of these groups come to the British Improv Project, and there's a strong level of talent. This coming November's event, I've staggered the programme, so there's stuff for every level.
Brilliant.
So there's workshops for people who've never done improv before, and there's the level 4 workshops, which are like noted as being elite improvisers. So I wanted to make sure there was something that challenged everybody, basically. So there's stuff for everyone. So there's no point going, "Oh, they're not going to be very good improvisers." No, there's stuff for you. There's stuff for everybody to come and enjoy. And then we do a demo show on the Friday night, which is basically, here's what's happening over the weekend in the workshops. So people can go, "Oh, I wasn't going to do that workshop, but that looks good. I might go and do it."
Cool.
And then there's a massive jam, which usually lasts about 3 hours on the Saturday night. It's going to be so long with 60 people this time. I hadn't thought about that. So that's going to be a really long show, but that's usually really good, and I compare that. So scenes of different lengths, games. There's usually, we like to throw in an Armando just because I like an Armando. There's this event's for the first time. The entire Sunday morning there will be a 3-hour Harold practice session in the programme. So people who've done Harolds before, if you've never done Harold before, it's not for you, because we haven't got the kind of time to teach group game and openings and all of that. But if you've done it before, it's an opportunity to practice for 3 hours, basically.
Brilliant.
So there's that involved. There's a group discussion on the Saturday afternoon. So I think this time the theme is going to be building a scene. So if you're pretty much the only improviser in your area, we're going to talk about ways you can bring people in or whatever.
Oh, wow, that sounds really really useful.
It's a really good. Like, we had a great conversation at the last weekend about how we can make it more accessible for women to be involved, because. It's the free time at the last event, because as I say, I put 90 minutes of free time in so people can go and do something that isn't using their brain. Most people go and play frisbee because, improv isn't white enough.
I love frisbee. Frisbee's about the only sport that I genuinely love.
Exactly. But we have a good percentage of the weekend is attended by women. But we wanted to make sure that we were going, okay, how can we make sure that you're not talked over in workshops or whatever, and make sure you've got equal input? And I've tried to make sure there's more women involved, and we set up a committee for the Same Faces this year, so there's made sure there's a balance of women on that. It's very easy for me because I was raised by strong women, so I sometimes forget it's an issue for other people, because I just go, women know what they're talking about, listen to the women. So that was a really good discussion, and we've had it's a Q&A as well, so anything people want to ask about, we just throw it open to the group and the wealth of knowledge is shared. So that's a good hours session on the Saturday afternoon, and the workshops are very varied, as I say. I try and curate the programme in such a way that there's not too much similar stuff going on.
Right, yeah.
And I'm going to stop talking about it now because I know we both have to go and see a show.
Thank you very much for coming on the Improv London podcast.
Oh, a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I made this.
That's improv!